Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm really excited to bring another one of our clients on. So today we're bringing on Greg Bear from Bear Group, and Greg's been one of our clients for quite a while now, and really has seen some major growth that we think is really important for our audience to hear and kind of talk through his process. But before we get into any of that, Greg, why don't you give us a little bit of your background as well as the background into Bear Group and how it got started?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Let's see, and thanks for having me. Bear Group's a web development firm. We're started in Seattle, headquartered here, and started in 2007 actually. So it's almost our 14th year, going in January. So been doing it for a while. Supporting websites for organizations, ideally to delight customers and streamline their operations and help them grow. So we had a lot of nice transformation stories over those years with clients. We started out as a Drupal shop, so Drupal content management system, and then started working with Magento about 10 years ago, and all the related integrations that go with that. So that's a big piece of our organization. We try and both be consultants as well as coders, so we're pretty adept at business in general and kind of help them figure out online infrastructure decisions and things like that. It's been fun. We work in this 21st century field, and we're fully remote. So there's about 26 of us at the moment today, kind of west of the Mississippi, essentially. It's been work with all sorts of wonderful organizations over those years, and clients, and really look for those long-term relationships. So that's kind of our story.
How long have you been remote?
The whole time. So we actually have always, we started that way.
Wow.
We started at, and there was those other Drupal folks out like Lullabots out there and other folks out there who were sort of pioneering on the remote work front, and really organized that way from the get-go. And so we just set up that way initially. Started, we did have a pool of folks in the Seattle area for a while, and including some folks on the management team, and then one moved to LA, and then one moved to Montana, and then it was just like, okay, let's embrace this. And so it's our director of engineering is now in Kansas City, so we just have a great
so you're working your way east.
What's that?
You're working your way east.
We are working our way east. We actually have one employee who's actually full time in his RV, so he's always ultra remote. He took it.
Yeah. So we had one of those too. Yeah,
it's pretty
that's
cool,
totally
actually.
Cool.
And he's got the best bandwidth of any of us. So.
Man, technology has changed quite a bit over the last 14 years, though.
It has.
Yeah. Speed.
It was this type of technology that like Jira, Zoom, Slack, kind of those primary communication really made that remote work model possible. So
now we're all sitting back while the kids are on Zoom and everything, going, welcome to our world.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. Totally.
The secret's out. So the secret sauce is out. So I mean, kind of talk us through kind of the headspace, like what got you to the point. I mean, obviously very successful, been doing it for a very, very long time. What kind of got you to that point where you're like, hey, I could use a CFO? What were you looking for?
So I met Jody Grunden at Owners Camp in Bureau of Digital Owners Camp. Went to that in 2016 down in Scottsdale, and he was one of the presenters. So that's the first time I sort of encountered this idea of virtual. I didn't realize that existed before. Maybe it didn't. And I had run the finance side of our business. I kind of had my MBA and kind of finance entrepreneurship. I felt like I started a couple companies, so it felt like I had that piece of it. No QuickBooks well. I thought I kind of knew it all. On hearing him speak, realized really there's some big pieces here I don't do well. And as we were growing, we were growing. I was wearing a lot of hats, a lot of biz dev, and as well as production team side hats. And started looking around at some of our financial situation and just being like, it should be we should be doing better than this. Like, we're making a lot of money. It just seems to be flying out the door. I just don't have a very good grip on it. So it was around that, I guess 2.5, 3 years ago, I reached out to Jody and just said, hey, it's something size company you'd be interested in working with. And yeah, so that was kind of how it started. I think there were just some operational, partly to offload the finance side and get some additional inputs on it. But once I did it, I realized like, oh, I should have done this at the beginning. Wish I could get those first 10 years back and have you guys running our books and just structurally your approach to it has been really, which we could talk about more in a sec, but it's really up-leveled our business in a really great way.
So what size both revenue and team members were you at when you hired us? Because I think the problem you're talking through is very common where you're wearing too many hats. I'm just curious, like what size you're at when you started to feel that, and then when you hired us.
Yeah, we were probably like 15 or so, and employee-wise, doing $1.5 million or something like that in revenue, and so and we'll cross 4 million this year. So it's been over that couple years of growth. So
that's a big lift in a couple of years.
No. So it's been a lot of really, and some of that's new lines of business for us, but some of it's been some of it's just better management, honestly. It was when I got in touch with Jody, I realized he had written a book, and he had this great quote in there about cash making big problems small. And it's like, oh, that's one of our issues. It was clear, like cash flow and cash flow management is the name of the game in this type of agency. And
absolutely.
So that was one of the real huge additions for us.
Yeah, it's funny you said one. I was expecting somewhere near 2. I don't know about you, Adam, because that's normally when people start to feel that really of
right around 1.5. Yeah,
I'm the marketing director, I'm the CFO, I'm the CEO, and so like again when you said 1.5, that didn't surprise me because usually it's somewhere around that 1.5 to 2 million. So that was what I was expecting.
Yeah, so we weren't very big, but it was also like one of those where it's like, okay, I need more. I'm sure there's better ways to do this than what I'm doing. So had all these elaborate spreadsheets and was like kind of managing cash flow myself. And so kind of it was actually, some of it was very reassuring. And when we started working with Summit to have you kind of come in and clean house, you were very, very nice about, there's some things here that are good, that you're doing well, and here's some ways we would maybe change it. So and I was a little resistant to some of that, just because I had my way of doing it for that first decade. But it really did. It's like, okay, every time I've gone your way, everything goes better. So,
that's good to hear. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit. I mean, yeah, you don't want to ever take the visibility away because obviously you've been doing a lot of things right. You wouldn't have been in business as long as you were. Yeah. So no question, things were dialed in. It's just for us trying to tell the correct story for you, we kind of have to get things dialed in. So I know that can be a little bit of a dating process too at the beginning, moving through that whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that the transition went well. So.
Yeah, the onboarding was really neat, actually. I mean, that was where we, you restructured accounts. One of the ways that was interesting, just, I was looking to kind of put all our chart of accounts together, and they broke it up by production and admin and marketing. It was the first time I could really see reporting by like, oh, here's the actual cost of our production team. And I mean, all seems very, probably.
No, that's great.
Simple,
no,
but it was
there's
great.
A lot of agencies that are $8, $10, $12 million agencies that we run into, and they still kind of have everything mashed together too. So I mean, that's not unique at all. And again, it shouldn't be be just because, I mean, we're dorky accountants, that's what we do. So we're the finance, we're the which was why we make such a great team.
Maybe so.
Yep. So yeah, it's been great. So.
And that's one of the reasons we do it in onboarding too, right? Because it is very common, right? So the things that we try to get done in our onboarding are the things that we find common errors that, one, create discussion, but two, are also things that we can fixed pretty quickly, that gives you that extra look like, oh, wow, I've never seen my financials like this. And that's exactly how you said it. So I think that those are two of the things. I think you mentioned cash and the restructuring of the financial statements. Anything else during that onboarding process that you can remember that really jumped out to you and helped you move along quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple of years ago, so it's the definitely, connected into all your systems. Obviously, you guys are QuickBook wizards, so already knew everything around that ability to do to see marketing expense, admin expense, and then our actual production, not just expense but cost of revenue, and all that attribution that happened was really very enlightening. And then from there, setting up forecasts was really cool. That was a neat, we're still using the same model that Michelle set up at the beginning for forecasts, and which really became more of a planning tool, right? So I mean, as they should be, but we did both the annual forecast, looking ahead for a year, and then we're making monthly meetings. Just the cadence of meetings that started to happen after that has been one of the huge highlights for me. It's almost that regularity of like, oh, I'm checking our forecast every month with Michelle. We're walking through, talking about adjustments to it. Like, they're usually not a ton, but there's some. And how does that affect, what's going to happen in next quarter? What do we need to plan for? And we started planning out our cash allocation. So for big, larger expenses or big conferences we might be at, or just tax savings, monthly and stuff like that. So just typical budgeting stuff that got all set up right at the very beginning, and has been something we've maintained all the way through, and it's been great. So it's really changed our visibility on the business.
That's the key right there. You just nailed it. Visibility. I mean, that's the, being deliberate with the plan, but then of course, like all good plans, things kind of break. I mean, obviously nobody planned for COVID. Right. So being able to have your hands around all that kind of stuff and what the potential impacts could be, be able to plug and play that in the forecast, I think is key. And I think that's the thing too, is like a lot of people ask us, so you come in, you help fix things, you get things going, but it's a perpetual service, so it's one of those things that's always evergreen. So how does that look for you now? I mean, how are you leveraging the team? What are you, I mean, is it primarily the forecasting and just knowing kind of the financials are in place, or?
Yeah, three things happen. One is the forecasting monthly, and then we do our monthly kind of in looking back annual or monthly reviews cycle. So the financials are monthly as well. So those are sort of the bigger pictures, looking at kind of three primary KPIs that got set up also in the initial reporting, sort of around levels of cash we like to maintain, profitability, net income we're trying to maintain. And those are, just keeping the eye on that scorecard has been really great. And my favorite though is, a plug for Allie, who's great. I'm sure you know that, but she's, we meet every Monday and talk cash. Like, it's just this weird, it's like, I was looking at it once a month, maybe twice, every other month. Sometimes I wouldn't. Like, to have that regularity on looking at our cash situation, like what's going on. I mean, when I walked in the door, we had like 100K in cash, which wouldn't cover us for a payroll, payroll and a half maybe. We had a lot of long ARs, and we had a credit line we were using to help finance invoices for those long ARs, which was, it got kind of pointed out, like, that's
those are painful
on people who haven't paid you. That's been really, that cadence has been one of those, just the ritual of it and doing it has been fantastic. And really, looking at, we meet every Monday, look at cash, what happened last week, what's happening this current week with cash, what's happening next week with cash. And that visibility again is just kind of that, the planning that was needed. And, it really was a year later, we had it fully turned around. It was, we had paid off all of our credit. We had 500K in cash. It would, like, we're sitting in just such a different position. And that just has been, that's just been very stabilizing for us as an organization, of course. And then, and it's like, if there's employee turnover or key employees, or a client pays us a little bit late, or there's an issue in the pipeline for a month with COVID, like when it sort of totally dipped in March, April, before the PPP stuff kicked in or whatever, it was like, okay, how are we going to navigate? We have the cash to navigate this. Like, we're going to be okay. We can run for 6 months if we needed to, and never
Makes a
take
big
another
difference.
job. So it just really was, it just changes your whole outlook on the emergency, like not dealing with emergency management or something.
Yeah.
So
It's amazing. It's amazing how we're not like, I mean, it's not like we're talking about like selling more, doing more, but I think, an important thing that you said there was the cadence of it just makes it more deliberate and just having that cadence of constantly going through that, just there's this, inertia that builds that can build up those things that you're doing right, and just kind of those as you go. So
that's well said. I think that was really interesting to me, is actually the business was a lot more profitable than I realized it was. and I mean, we were like doing okay, I felt like, and making money, and but it was actually there was a lot more here than I realized even.
So I want to hear more about this a little bit, Greg, because this is one of the main reasons I brought you on. So we did our 6-month check-in not too long ago, and you kind of talked through how good things were going, and talked a lot about these cash numbers that you just mentioned. But I know Michelle's great, and I know Allie's great, but I think a lot of this has to do with you and your mindset. So I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit more, because again, we do the same thing with all of our clients, and I think a lot of our clients do get better with cash, but your success story is definitely up there in terms of how quickly it happened. So what was your mindset going into that, and what do you think that you attributed to helping your cash grow so quickly?
That's a good question. I always attribute it to you guys, so I don't know if I just keep sending you, bottles of wine and thank you cards. So we had a strong pipeline already. That was helpful. We were moving into a growth year anyway, and so that was already also helpful. We had moved into, right when you guys came on, we had just done a whole strategic plan around a growth cycle for us, where we're going to basically add 7-8 people, which is a lot for our size. But we hadn't really looked at the financial impact of that. And so that really took us underwater very quickly. With just, kind of getting ahead of ourselves. And so when we started sort of managing that closer with kind of cash closer and kind of managing that, we were able to really leverage that growth cycle. So we were able to actually profit from it, rather than it taking us, kind of down. So I think that was the timing was really good. Partly, we were growing anyway, but we were growing without much fiscal responsibility. So it added that layer to it.
Having the visibility probably made the goal clear. That's
for
the way it usually works. So.
And I also think you bought in too. That's a big thing, talking to Michelle and Allie, I think you bought in pretty quickly that, like, when we tell you that cash is going to, I mean, you said very early on when you quoted Jody, but cash is going to make your problems seem a lot easier. And I think you bought in very quickly, which anytime you buy into a goal makes it a lot easier. So I think, a lot of it has to attribute to that, because again, we give this advice to some clients and they're like, yeah. And they just don't really hear it and don't believe it. And then, you have the clients like you that are like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And then you buy in, and then you, like, to Adam's point, you focus on those goals and you know what it takes to get those goals, and it just becomes a little bit easier too. So I think that is a lot of why I think you lead to the success as well.
It's fun, and there's the it's hard for folks to see, and maybe it's just human, the incremental nature of that growth and how it works, and it's something that, like, accountants have in their blood, like that incremental, like Michelle really broke that down. It's like, okay, you're going to be at $1 million of net income if you do these things. It's like, here's what you need to do. Break that down monthly. Here's what you need to do. I was like, no way. Like, that's like from where we started. Like if you say so, but that seems kind of like a bunch of crazy talk. And but it happened. Like, okay, it's just like incrementally just chipped away each month. Kind of, okay, we got to hit this goal. Got to hit this goal. Like, so that's how it happens. So it's slow and steady.
Yeah, and Jamie had kind of hit on like the MP too. I mean, one thing that's really important for us is just to make sure that, we're managing expectations and we're always, being there for you. So I know he checks in on a semi-annual basis, but then we also send out those. So I'm going to put you on the spot, because we also send out the yellow, red, green emails you see very often or not. But kind of talk to us about, do you feel, I mean, has that made you feel like you always have somebody else that you can lean on? I mean, we talk about that a lot. Like, we do genuinely want you to have kind of an account manager outside of that. That's the reason why Jamie's kind of focusing in on that stuff. And then I'm usually sending out those monthly touches. Have you found that to be helpful at all, or?
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, it's nice to have I appreciate I mean, of the vendors we work with, you're the only one that ever checks in with us. So thank you for that. Yeah, we actually we were modeling on something very similar to the smiley, frowny, medium face emails for our own client base. Actually, there's been nice things that you guys have been experimenting with that we're like, hey, we should do that, with our clients too, because it's a really nice just touch point, check in, see how they're doing, and is it net promoter score, kind of like would you for us, because that's key to growth, right? I mean, it's like that referral strategy is really important. So yeah, I love those touch points. I think the account management side of what you're doing is great, and it's probably about the right amount. I mean, I talk weekly with Ali and every other week with Michelle. So like we have a lot of touch points with your organization already. In there that I have them on Slack. So it's quick to answer quick questions. They've been helpful with things that are like, oh, would you want some personal finance assistance, or there was like a funny tax differential issue from our tax accountants in Seattle, and so they helped solve some of that or figure it out. So yeah, I mean, you guys have our back. It's really great. So and the escalation points into other areas too has been really nice too. If we have questions about a tax or a state and local tax issue, you guys can help with that, or if whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, because you always worry when you send those out. Like, we don't want to be annoying, like by sending too many spam emails. But you always worry, like, because there's a fine line between that. So I have a question for you as well. This is something that has always been curious to me. So we pride ourselves on being dynamic and always changing. But I'm wondering how that looks from a client standpoint, because obviously we've made some changes to our financial statements. We've made some changes to cash flow and some other areas. Like, have you seen those changes all as being good, or how has your thought been on as we change things in the package we deliver?
I haven't thought about a ton, but we're pretty flexible. So it's there was a tool that you guys were using in between that was really slow. So there was like a performance issue on the tool itself. It just didn't calculate things fast. So I was just like, oh, let's go look at QuickBooks. It has the same data. So we didn't use it a ton. But the one that you're on now, I don't know the name of it, but the one that we're using for our monthly reporting seems awesome. And dip through it. And the cash flow one, Ali loves it. And so and she can just like matrix her way around in it. And so it's they're great. I mean, they seem very, very like useful additional tools. I'm going to forget the name of it, but Plan Guru was really an interesting eye opener, kind of how to break it. Just the granularity in there is awesome. And the way it sort of builds up a forecast. And our only, I used to do all that stuff myself. So I kind of got it wrenched out of my hands, and that took a little bit of like, okay, I don't have to go play with our forecast every day. And it's been very actually, and I recognize, I think too, that that's not something I probably should be doing. And so I push it through. I asked Michelle first.
Yeah, we're gonna record this. So we're recorded. So we're gonna make sure that we just cut that little snippet that you just said there, and make sure that goes on with all of our onboarding calls, because it is one of those things where get used to you get used to playing in it all the time, and you want to tinker, and we definitely have clients that want to tinker, but we want to be a part of those conversations. Totally. And it's also one of those things where if you do it too much, you can just overwork the thing to death. So so it's like, well, one, don't break it, please. You might come up with a different solution. And then the other thing is, like, we want to be a part of that station. So it's cool that I know it was probably a little bit of a change for you there at the beginning. It's really nice to hear that you were able to kind of, hang with us there and get through that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's been nothing but good. And now it's like I wouldn't make a forecast change without running it by Michelle. It's like, because I want her to be aware of it, and she's like, oh yeah, that's what are you thinking? Or, it's like, he always has input on it, and it's really helpful. So.
It's always good to have someone to talk to that's in the know about your company.
Exactly.
I think that's a lot of what having a CFO is. It's someone that knows your company, but also has a little bit of understanding of finance. And so I know when I was a CFO, some of the calls I would get, they weren't really finance related. It was just someone to talk to that understood your business. And there's definitely some comfort in that.
No, that's for sure. And honestly, as sole owner here, I didn't have anyone in the organization else to talk to about finance stuff. So we had our accounting group we work with, but and our product, we talk a lot about project-based accounting in the project teams, but the actual business accounting, I was the only one looking at it. So, but not anymore. And that's been better.
Awesome. You got a team.
Yep. So we're right up on time here. So Greg, I really appreciate you joining us. Yeah. I would love for you to give us any final thoughts. Again, for anybody that's thinking about getting a CFO, what should they be thinking about?
Definitely. This model was really great because you could ease into it. So it was such a great, the fractional model, the cost of hiring your own CFO, like this same team, hiring the same team for myself, it just wouldn't be feasible, right? I mean, and who would want to work with you? So what you've built is really unique. And I think that idea of a fractionalized approach where you can get just the time you need with really clear deliverables is super worth it. I would certainly encourage anyone to give it a shot, because it's a neat way to kind of, for an agency kind of in that size, to actually get a bunch of professional financial management support for really, really good price. So that's by comparison.
Great. No, definitely appreciate that. Adam, any final thoughts from you before we shut down here?
Just Greg, appreciate you being a client and being a friend and coming and hanging out with us. Really great to hear your story. You are kind of like, if we had to draw up the perfect client, you model. So
all right,
everything you said there, man, that's who, we just love hanging out. That's right, man. We just love hanging out and collaborating. So really appreciate you hanging with us and letting us be a part of your team.
Thank you. Yeah, and and we think of you that way. To be honest, you're in our org chart, so it's
awesome.
We
like to hear.
Yeah, it's great to hear.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, thanks and great conversation, and appreciate both you guys joining.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.